And then David Brooks, a lot of progressives' favorite conservative. You know, he writes op-ed piece for the New York Times a couple times a week. He's a very bright man, but he's a right winger. Well, he's a conservative. But he had a column today. If not Trump, what? If not Trump, who would be what I would expect? How I would expect that question to be phrased. But he says, if not Trump, what? Well, I've got to share this with you. He says, Donald Trump now looks set to be the Republican presidential nominee. For those of us who are appalled by this prospect, what are we supposed to do? Poor David Brooks. Well, not what the leaders of the Republican Party are doing. They're going down meekly and hoping for a quiet convention. They seem blithely unaware that this is a Joe McCarthy moment. People will be judged by where they stood at this time. Those who walked with Trump will be tainted forever for the degradation of standards and the general election slaughter. Woo, David. The better course for all of us, Republican, Democrat, Independent, is to step back and take the long view and to begin building for that. This election, not only for Trump, the Trump phenomenon, but the rise of Bernie Sanders also, this election has reminded us how much pain there is in this country. According to a Pew Research poll, 75% of Trump voters say that life has gotten worse for people like them over the last half century. No shit. You don't have to be a Trump supporter to feel that. But anyway, this declinism intertwines with other horrible social statistics. The suicide rate has surged to a 30-year high, a sure sign of rampant social isolation. A record number of Americans believe the American dream is out of reach. And for millennials, social trust is at historic lows. Trump's success grew out of that pain, but he is not the right response to it. The job for the rest of us is to figure out the right response. Really? Okay. David Brooks is having some kind of a, some kind of a moment. He's very close to a conversion of going from the smart-ass country club Republican to sounding a bit like somebody in the streets supporting Bernie Sanders. But let me go on. He says that means first it's necessary to go out into the pain. Go out into the pain. I was surprised by Trump's success because I've slipped into a bad pattern, spending large chunks of my life in the bourgeois strata, in professional circles with people with similar status and demographics to my own. It takes an act of will to rip yourself out of that and go where you feel least comfortable. But this column is going to try to do that over the next months and years. We all have some responsibility to do one activity that leaps across the chasm of segmentation that afflicts this country. Really? We'll probably need a new national story. Up until now, America's story has been some version of the rags to riches story, the lone individual who rises from the bottom through pluck and work. But that story isn't working for people anymore, especially for people who think the system is rigged. I don't know what the new national story will be, but maybe it will be less individualistic and more redemptive. Maybe it will be a story about communities that heal those who suffer from addiction, broken homes, trauma, prison, and loss. A story of those who triumph over the isolation, social instability, and dislocation so common today. Communities that heal those who suffer from all this. Now, think about that for a moment. I mean, having community support for anything is a wonderful, grand idea. It really is. But we are no more interested in community support for any goddamn thing in this country than we're interested in all becoming, farm workers. It's just not there. It's been driven out of the American consciousness. Now, what Brooks is talking about is trying to get it back. Good luck, David. We'll probably need, he goes on, a new definition of masculinity, too. There are many groups in society who have lost an empire but not yet found a role. I'm not sure what that means. Men are the largest of those groups. The traditional masculine ideal isn't working anymore. It leads to high dropout rates, high incarceration rates, low labor force participation rates. Who's he talking about there? This is an economy that rewards emotional connection and verbal expressiveness. Elsewhere, you see men imprisoned by the old, reticent, stoical ideal. The fuck is he talking about? I mean, he says he needs to come out of his ivory tower, more or less, and go to where the pain is. God damn. You talk about somebody who has immunized himself and surrounded himself with whatever it takes, to the point where now, when he writes like this, well, I have to go out where the pain is. I've got to go see the pain. Jesus Christ. And here it comes. We'll also need to rebuild the sense that we're all in this together. Many people feel pervasively betrayed by for-profit job training outfits that left them awash in debt, by spouses and step-parents, by people who collect federal benefits but don't work. They've stopped even expecting loyalty from their employers. The big flashing lights say, no trust! That leads to an everyone out for himself mentality and Trump's politics of suspicion. We'll need a communitarianism. Communitarianism. Communism? Maybe the task is to build a ladder of hope. Don't you love these ivory tower intellectuals? I love them. People across America have been falling through the cracks. Their children are adrift. Trump, to his credit, made them visible. Trump made them visible? See, when Brooks writes like this, he speaks volumes about himself. Trump made them visible? We can start at the personal level just by hearing them talk. You deaf son of a bitch. I hate this. I hate it when these ivory tower intellectual writers come up with this shit. I really do. We can start at the personal level just by hearing them talk. Oh, my God. I guess he's been walking around like this, his fingers in his ears, huh? Ever since he's been a whatever he is. He goes on. Then at the community level, we can listen to those already helping. James Fallows had a story in The Atlantic recently noting that while we're dysfunctional at the national level, you see local renaissances dotted across the country. Fallows went around asking, who makes this town go? And found local patriots creating radical schools and arts festivals and public-private partnerships that give, say, high school dropouts computer skills. Then solidarity can be rekindled nationally. Over the course of American history, national projects like the railroad legislation, the WPA, and the NASA projects have bound this diverse nation. Of course, such projects can happen again, maybe through a national service program or something else. Wow. Sounds like a socialist, doesn't he? Trump will have his gruesome moment. The time is best spent elsewhere, meeting the neighbors who have become strangers and listening to what they have to say. David Brooks having his own personal crisis moment. I wonder about these right-wingers who have been writing for decades, literally for decades, some of them, shoring up or attempting to shore up the neoliberal bullshit that dominates the world. The unfairness here at home, constantly telling people, well, all you have to do is get off your ass, learn a skill or go to school, get a degree, and the world is just waiting for you to come and take a bite out of it. And how long has it been since we have known that that's a bunch of bullshit? That is just not true. And I think he's trying to say we can't keep telling ourselves that story. It was never true to begin with, was it? Except for a few people who had an extreme amount of luck, an extreme amount of circumstances that came together, and they were in the right time at the right place. I'm not talking about the ones who made their fortunes on slavery or made their fortunes by dominating an industry and fucking hiring people to come and kill the workers who had the audacity to want to organize and form a union. No, I'm not talking about them. There were people. I think about, I don't know if this is a good example. I really don't give a shit. But the name that pops in my head is Andrew Carnegie. Immigrant from Scotland, wasn't he? Steel industry. Made enormous mountains of money. And did some good with it, didn't he? I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I don't. What a political season this has been.